All right, welcome back to episode 20 of Book Nook Brews, in which we are covering the last few chapters of The Martian. I believe it's like chapters 22 through 26.
Yep.
We're coming to a close. We
Yeah.
came to a close with this book.
Yes, we did.
Oh my gosh, so much happened. It was the least amount of chapters, but so much went on. I feel like there was no moment where I could just breathe.
Right.
Oh my god. But the brew for today, I have a nice blue moon with an orange garnish on the side. So good.
And I have a Modelo beer. Yeah.
Jami. I did want to mention, so I'm doing this small little book club with some friends, and the book we decided to read for Dune was Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez, and oh my gosh, I cannot give Abby Jimenez like more praise than I already do. And I told you that I feel like this is one book that I think you should give a try, because the way Abby Jimenez writes romance is it's so digestible. And I feel like it might be like a romance a rom-com actually, that you may enjoy. So, I mean, you did read the Am I the Asshole part at the beginning, and you did like it a little. Aren't you curious as to where it's gonna go?
No.
we'll leave the door open eventually for you one day. It's okay.
Don't let the air get out.
I have that book there. You know, it'll be waiting for you. Just letting you know. You know.
Okay, thanks.
Now I think the next book that I picked up is the Atlas. I just don't remember the author. I believe her name starts with Olivia or Olivie. I don't know. But I'm starting that book next. And that's just for my own enjoyment. So, but yeah, those are the only little things I really had to add before we get into the recap and whatnot.
All right. So, this week we start off with chapter 22. All right. Whatney is 10 sols into his trip when he makes it to the Marth Vallis, a long stretch of flat land made by a mega flood in a single day. He explains his routine on a driving day. After he wakes, he folds up his bedroom, packs the solar cells, drives 4 hours, puts out the solar cells, reassembles his bedroom, checks his equipment, and gives NASA his status via rock Morse code. On his rest days, he turns on the oxygenator to replenish the oxygen levels. Venkat goes on Kathy Warner's CNN show to report on the challenge of the dust storm. Venkat hopes Whatney will notice in time and find a way around the storm. Kathy remarks, "All of Earth is watching, but powerless to help." Whatney explains that he navigates using a sextant and the star Deneb for latitude, and Phobos, the moon, to calculate longitude. On Sol 468, Whatney manages to maneuver through the tricky needle between two giant craters, Rutherford and Trouvelot. On Sol 471, he enters a dust storm but does not know it. On Sol 473, he notices his batteries are taking longer to recharge. And on Sol 475, he notices a haze in the air. He realizes he is in a dust storm and alerts NASA that he is making a plan. Chapter 23. Mark Whatney figures he needs to learn the shape of the storm in order to avoid it. To do that, he has to drive in several directions and test percent power loss. Between Sol 476 and 477, the solar cell efficiency drops 4.5%, which shows Whatney that the storm is moving east to west. By Sol 479, he calculates that the storm is to the north of him. He can drive south and then head east. By Sol 484, he has finally driven south enough to be out of the storm, which puts him catastrophically off course. On Sol 487, Whatney briefly considers making a detour to drive 300 kilometers off course to retrieve the radio from the Opportunity probe because he is lonely, but he decides against it. On Sol 498, he descends carefully into the Schiaparelli crater, but flips the rover and disconnects from the trailer in the process. Chapter 24. NASA reviews the footage of Whatney's crash. Bruce, how do we say his last name? NG? Bruce explains that the rover's designed to handle a roll and believes the crash is not as bad as it looks. Whatney assesses the damage and determines he can limp on. He lost 3 solar panels, the tow hook is ruined, and he needs to get both the trailer and the rover upright. Because he's on the wall of the crater, he does not have many hours of the sun to work in, so it takes him several sols to get back on track. He decides he has to drive much slower to avoid another accident. On Sol 504, he picks up the MAV's homing signal, and on Sol 505, he finally arrives at his destination. Chapter 25. Mark Whatney arrives at the MAV and has his first conversation with NASA in over 300 sols. NASA tells him he will have to gut the MAV. Bruce presents plans to lose weight on the MAV and make more fuel with Whatney's water and urine. Whatney will also have to lose the nose airlock and front windows, covering the hull with hab canvas. Venkat Kapoor muses, "You're sending him to space under a tarp." All of these modifications bring the odds of failure to 4%. Whatney does the modifications following a script sent by NASA. Meanwhile, Major Rick Martinez practices scenarios for remotely piloting the MAV, and Chris Beck prepares for his EVA to drag Whatney in. Whatney turns water into rocket fuel following NASA's orders. NASA finally allows the Ares 3 crew to talk to Whatney directly. He tells them he has really missed them. The day before the maneuver, the Ares 3 crew prepares to extract Whatney, and NASA prepares to watch because they are completely helpless being so far away. Whatney waits and reminisces about all he has done on Mars. Chapter 26 and the final chapter. People on Earth gather to watch Whatney's rescue. The Ares 3 crew is ready. Whatney is ready. NASA hopes for the best. Whatney lifts off, and the force is so great it knocks him unconscious. The altitude of the MAV is not high enough because of a rip in the hab canvas causing drag. The Ares 3 crew realizes the distance at intercept will be too far, so Martinez has to burn the jets off of their ship to get closer. Unfortunately, that means they will go 90 miles per hour, with no hope of Beck grabbing Whatney at that speed. Whatney wakes up and complains of his chest pain. He suggests poking a hole in his EVA suit to give him more thrust. Commander Melissa Lewis rejects that plan, but it gives her the idea to blow the vehicular airlock in order to produce thrust. Alex Vogel makes a bomb using sugar, wire, and oxygen. They blow the airlock, and Beck jumps out to meet the MAV. Beck connects with Whatney and pulls him in. The control room at NASA explodes with applause. Once safely inside, Whatney takes off his EVA suit, and the crew is horrified by his stench. But even though he stinks, he declares, "This is the happiest day of my life." And that is the end of The Martian.
I'm gonna be honest.
Yes.
I wanted a little bit more from the ending, but I'll take what I can get. I don't know. I was hoping, like, maybe to get something once they were back on Earth, but it's okay. He's alive. He's well. But I really like the last few chapters. They were really good.
Yeah. When I was reading the last 2 chapters, I was doing that thing with my leg when I'm anxious, where I just move it.
Yeah.
I was doing that while reading it. I could not put that down.
I told you.
Yeah. I also agree. I expected a little more from the ending. It kind of ended very, 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 very abruptly.
Yes.
It, like, they grabbed him, they pulled him into the ship, complained about his stench, and then that's it. Right? Like, and obviously it's like that because they're not going to be home on Earth for still some months.
Yeah.
But I feel like they could have had a little more interaction, because they kind of like had some quips at each other, and then they complained about his stinkiness, and he was like, yeah, I like all of this, but it's still the happiest day of my life. Like, I feel like they still should have gone back to Earth in this.
Do like a time jump.
Maybe not a time jump. I also wanted to see them go back to Earth from that ship, because anything can still go wrong, right? Because they blew up part of their stuff, but then they airlocked it, so it was fine then. But I mean, that could cause some complications, I'm assuming, right, on a ship.
Yeah, but I will say, keep in mind, like the book itself is about him being on Mars.
Yeah, so, but it's like you get him on the ship, that's still not 100%
back on Earth. Yeah,
you get him back to the crew that left him there, and that's like closure there. But he's still, we still don't know if he makes it. I mean, it's insinuated, right? But we don't know for sure that he's back on Earth, or that that the crew makes it back on Earth, right? So that's where I'm kind of like, nah. Like, yeah, we got him off Mars. He met up with the crew again. They know he's alive. Cool, buddies again. But we were promised beers on Earth and stuff like that, right?
Where's the Brews?
Like, where is that? And I was hoping for like another Cubs reference. Like, as soon as he gets back in there, he's like, wait. What? How'd my Cubs do? Something like that. But, all he really said was, it's the best or the happiest day of my life.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know. I was just hoping a little more from that. Still a good ending. Obviously expected. I didn't think it was gonna die. I didn't think anyone was really gonna die. I was hoping for a little more, maybe complications, but
so you don't think he went through enough?
No, him, yeah, but I don't know. I don't know. That maybe not that. I don't know. I'm left with the feeling of wanting more from that, but I just can't really quite put my finger on what else.
It's strange. On the other hand, I am satisfied with his whole journey. For me, I think what I would have enjoyed from the ending is a time skip to when they're back on Earth, because we've already seen them go through hell. Like, yeah, especially Mark. He's been through it all. Like, a nice trip back home would have been like good. It's good for him. Yeah. The crew, they dealt with like some minor things, but even then, like, they made it out. Yeah. I think I would have enjoyed, like, after they rescued him, just a nice time skip to when either they land or like a week after they landed, and like how they kind of got acclimated or went back to their lives, or just kind of to tie it up a little bit.
You know what? Because sorry, go ahead.
Because it ended more like you said, as it's an open ending. You can assume that they got back home and they're safe, or if you really want to be sadistic and everything, they don't make it home, they die. Yeah, but it's honestly left to your interpretation. So I'm opting for they survived, they made it back to Earth. I think I just would have like enjoyed that closure fully. But I don't think, for me personally, I don't think I would have needed anything from the journey back home. I think for me that I would have been okay with like a time skip.
Yeah, like, two things. One, what would be really cool if they did in the movie, or if they did it in the book too. But you know that, I don't know if you remember, but in the first Avengers, after they, defeat all the, like, that attack that happened in New York City. You remember that?
Yes.
It was like the Loki's
yes.
thing. After they finished that, at the end, they were eating dinner together. They were eating shawarma because Iron Man got knocked out, and then they got him back up after they won, and then he was like, "Anybody feel like eating shawarma?" or something like that, and then they cut to them eating at a restaurant while it's destroyed and all that, whatever. But something like that, like a time jump, and then it jumps to the crew at a bar getting those promised beers and just looking back at that, something like that, right? Like it just cuts to that. One thing I hope the movie doesn't do is end like that. That for a movie would be stupid. It's like, oh, this is the happiest day of my life. Directed by, and it's like, bro, no. Like I hope they do a time jump there, or at least get him back to Earth.
To Earth, and a little celebratory. Hey.
Yeah.
Hey.
Or like a ceremony, right? Like it cuts to him being in a ceremony, shaking the president's hand, or something like that, right? Or just him being recognized for his survival, basically, right?
Yes.
Something like that. I just hope it doesn't end exactly like the book. Like that's where I want the 5% inaccuracy of the book to come in, right? Because
I agree with this.
95% of the book being accurate is cool. Let that 5%, it better be for the better of it, right? It better come up with a better ending. I can't wait for that final scene in the movie.
Oh, that's going to be so epic.
I really wonder how they're going to do that. And if they're going to show everything from the crew side as well, or if we're going to get Whatney knocking out and then waking up to Beck, like right in front of him, Mm-hmm. If they're going to cut everything that the crew has to do, which I don't think so, because, I mean, it's a
I think they'll talk about it, or I think not talk about it, but they'll show the crew essentially going what they went through. But it's going to be nice to see how the movie depicts that. I mean, obviously the movie can't cover everything in the book, but that is of course going to be one of the main parts. I do feel like they're going to show how he figures out how to navigate through the dust storm.
Yeah.
I know they're going to have to edit out so much of his
logs.
Yeah, so much of his log, so much of the things that he had to go through. I don't think they're going to show that much like math or science-ness to it. Maybe a little bit, but not as much as we saw in the book.
Yeah.
I think.
No, and I think that's fair, because
obviously we're going to get to see the potatoes.
Yeah, no, the potatoes have to make it in. But yeah, I think the whole math and like the science part of it, I feel like they'll show it more than have him talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? They'll have him do like the experiments and all that kind of stuff there. One thing I did want to mention before I forget is I really thought there was a point in there where I was like, are they going to kill Beck off? Like when he goes and saves Whatney? I'm like, are we going to have a happy ending with like everybody alive? They're not going to kill off Whatney, but like, does he get saved? But because something happens to Beck, but he sends Whatney over, right? But because he had to make that jump to Whatney, would something happen? And like, because the author kept making an emphasis on there not being enough tether.
Yeah.
Right. So I was like, is something going to happen with the tether where at some point Beck is going to have to like chop it off or something in order to send Whatney back? So I really believe, I was like, wow, they might actually do this. But no, happy ending for all, I guess. What
do you mean? You want tragedy?
They would have made me cry in the movie.
That's crazy. So because I was reading the book with the Libby app, and I did like screenshot a couple of my favorite little things. First off, so there was this one part where Whatney jokes, but he says that he really wished that a green-skinned yet beautiful Queen of Mars would rescue him and can learn more about this thing, this Earth thing called quote-unquote love-making. He's like, it's been a long time since I've seen a woman, just saying. Anyways, to ensure I don't crash again, seriously, no woman in like years. I don't ask for much. Believe me, even back on Earth, a botanist / mechanical engineer doesn't exactly have ladies lined up at the door. But still, come on. Like,
Yeah.
This. Did he just say he's horny on Maine?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Like, this man has no shame in like mentioning this in his log at all.
Yeah. Yeah, that was wild of him.
And then another one of my little favorite moments was this is with Mindy and Venkat, where Mindy reads the Morse code of like rolled, fixed now. And Venkat's like, what? That's it? And she's like, yeah, that's all he said. Just 3 words. Nothing about his physical health, his equipment, his supplies. And she's like, you got me. He left a detailed status report. I just decided to lie for no reason.
Yeah.
And he's like, funny. Be a smartass to a guy 7 levels above you at your company. See how that works out. She's like, oh no, I might lose my job. But I thought that was another funny little moment. Another thing that I screenshot as well was when Mark finally got to talk with his crew.
Yeah. And
he was talking with Johansson, and the woman just goes away for a little bit, and so Martinez writes, when we pick you up, I will make wild, passionate love to you. Prepare your body. And she comes back. She's like, I didn't type that. That was Martinez. I stepped away from the console for like 10 seconds. Yeah. And he's like, I miss you guys. It really shows like the dynamic they've had between them.
Yeah.
So I really like that. Like the character building moment. That was chef's kiss. Another moment that I really enjoyed of the crew was between Mark and Commander Lewis, where he was pitching the idea of like making the little hole to like give him more velocity to come to them.
Yeah.
And she's like, no. And she's like, oh, well, if you won't let us, then wait a minute. I'm looking at my shoulder patch and it turns out I'm still the commander. Sit tight. We're coming to get you. And he's like, smart ass. Yeah. So those are just like some of my favorite little highlights, as well as when Beck got to Mark and he's like, just wait, give me, I just need a second. He's like, buddy, we don't have a second. We got to get going. Yeah. Like, we don't have.
Like, we actually have like 45 milliseconds to get the hell out of here.
So let's go. And then, of course, the moment where he's taking off his suit and they gave him a funny look. And it was because the man's stinky.
Yeah.
He hella stinky. So those are just a couple of my favorite little bits from the book that I enjoyed from like the last little bit. That's what I really enjoy about this author, and we'll get into the Brews review as well, but he really knows how to add comedic elements to the story to lighten it up a little bit and not make it so serious, even though it is a serious situation.
It's like a nice little break or pause from the science, but we're also like the drama and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, where are you going? You think it's time for the Brews review?
Yep, you can start it off.
Try to get into it. Okay, so let me bring up my little handy dandy notebook. So for book characters, I gave it a 5.
Same.
I feel like Andy Weir does a really great job of, especially with Mark, the different points of views that we've read in this story. He creates Mark as a very great character. Like he builds him up very great. You really get to see his personality, and it comes through naturally, and it doesn't really seem forced. Even the crew members as well. They are not given as much time as Whatney, obviously, but even the moments we've got with them, you can differentiate who is who.
Yeah.
They all have very unique personalities that you're able to distinguish them, and even the NASA people as well. It's just overall great.
Yeah, it felt like with Whatney, it was like, obviously main character, you were going to get all that. But with everybody else, I feel like you also just got enough. Like just enough to build an opinion on them, kind of get an idea of what kind of character they are, and just kind of go the rest of the story knowing, like you said, who's who, and building each character up. So yeah, I also gave it a 5.
And then for relatability, I gave it a 3. But hear me out. I gave it a 3 because I don't feel like there's much to relate to here, because I've never been stuck on Mars. I don't know, call me crazy, but it's just not a milestone I've been through in my life, okay? I have not been stranded. But some of the things that you can't really relate to are the qualities of Whatney himself, like coming out from this and showing his resilience and his persistence, especially like those moments where he has those tantrums and then snaps back out of it. He's like, okay, I've had my tantrum, but I have a plan. So like those are the moments where I really feel like that's where I could like relate to the most. And this is where maybe I feel like maybe relatability doesn't really apply to this book, because it's not something to really relate to, except for the characteristics of the character, of Whatney, like his personality and his traits. So that's why I like gave it a 3, but that was like,
Yeah. I gave it a 4. I didn't really take it into consideration, the fact that he was like stuck on Mars and all that kind of stuff for this. Just because it's like no one has been on Mars. So I was like, that's not really something I should like take, I guess, against it. But I gave it a 4 because of, one, like you said, his personality, his characteristics, and not just his, but also all the crew members, their relationships together and all that stuff, was overall very good. But I also took into account the overall, I guess, lesson of the book, or at least what I thought the lesson of the book was it was kind of pointed out in the last page too. He like touched on it. He's like, it's like humans have that want for like, not want, but are helpful beings, right? Like if someone needs help, most of us will try to help as much as we can. And it's also, you have these assholes out there, and you have these awful people, but majority is do whatever we can to help, like even a stranger, right? And it's just, I guess, seeing the better side of humanity was kind of like the thing here. Is like, it's one guy going up there, but they stopped everything at NASA. The crewmates would go back immediately, right, to save this one person. And he thought to himself, he's like, I'm just a botanist, I'm like basically saying, I was like, I'm nothing but a plant, dude. and they're over here like freaking out over me and stuff like that, right? So you have that lesson as like, yeah, there might be shitty things happening and stuff like that, but majority is humans are helpful to one another, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's where I kind of put my score up there to a 4. I would have done a 5, but I was like, at the same time, there's a lot of science and a lot of math, like talk in it. And while to me it was interesting, it will lose some people, right? And it maybe not enough to like drop the book, but it will take some people out of the moment or out of the story, stuff like that, just because, you know, like it's really not a relatable subject unless you are yourself an engineer or a chemist or something like that, right? So that's why I docked that 1 point. But yeah, I'm at a 4 for that one.
Yeah. And for experience / enjoyment, I give it a 4, because regardless of this not being like a go-to genre for me, I really enjoyed it. It was very enjoyable to read.
Yeah.
And that goes into like the next category as well. But like overall, it's a nice 4. It was enjoyable. I docked it a point because there were like the science, like the heavy science talk, and that's what, like you said, brought me out of it. Like there were many moments where my eyes just tended to just gloss over until I didn't really see the science talk.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, okay, I really should probably pay attention just this portion. But it would take me some bit, and it took me out of my own reading flow. So that's why I gave it a 4.
I gave it a 5, just because I overall just enjoyed it. Like from beginning to start, there wasn't a part where I'm like, ugh, like, dude, like get me to the next chapter or skipping out on anything. For me, it was just overall a very enjoyable read. So thank you. 5.
For writing style, I gave it a 4. As I was saying in the previous one, I really enjoyed the book because of how Andy Weir like writes. I docked it a little bit of points, like at least at 1 point, just because when it did switch points of views, sometimes it like when it was talking about Whatney in the third person, like from the narrator standpoint.
Yeah.
That's like, it kind of caught me off guard, but I understand why it was done. It just, it made me question it just a little bit, but I see why it was necessary. I just don't know if maybe there was just another way of going about it. But how can you describe what Whatney is going through if you're not doing it from an outside perspective? But in like those moments, it kind of made me think, is someone else watching him? But I was like, no, this is just really like the narrator's point of view of telling the story.
Yeah.
But it just, that little part, just little things that kind of took me out of the flow of just reading per se. Yeah. But overall, I really liked how we wrote the logs, how we switched between the logs as well as what's happening at NASA and with the crew, stuff like that.
Yeah. I give it a 5. Just because I didn't find it. I thought I was going to find the logs kind of weird at first. But I really enjoy them because it's kind of like a... Well, not kind of. It is basically like a diary, right, of him. Because you get the sections of the story where he's going through that thing at the moment. And, you know, it's just a regular, just written book, right? But then you also have the logs of him, like what he's thinking about what's like something that happened or about a conversation with NASA that he had. And then you see the NASA scripts also there. And then it switches the points of view to the NASA people. Like to me, the points of view were really good. I mean, you know that well, now we know, like from this podcast, is what I've realized is points of view is or something that I kind of enjoy. So for it to be going from like the NASA people to the crew to Whatney to his log entries, and then really the author going in there like himself almost, right? It's kind of like almost like a fourth wall type of thing. Not really.
Oh,
but
you took it as that way.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like you remember you remember that scene in Emperor's New Groove? They were outside Pacha's house, and then the movie just stops, and Cusco comes out as a llama, and he's like, just to clarify, this story is about me. And he like circles himself.
Oh, yeah.
And then he's like, not him, me. Just wanted to clarify this story. Cool. All right, carry on. Kind of like that. It was like the story was happening, and then the author was like, all right, just so you're aware, I'm still here. Here is what I'm writing about. Like, here's a quick summary, not a summary, but describing something so we won't have to go through a whole scene with Whatney and NASA. Like it saved time for the book, right? Because he just, I don't know how to describe it. He described a situation quicker, right? To kind of say, like, it was necessary info, but it didn't need to be a whole scene with Whatney or something like that.
I don't know. I guess I would have to reread those parts and see like how you came to interpret it, almost as like a fourth, like breaking the fourth wall per se.
It was like the author talking to the reader type of thing.
Because I would just take that as just like the narrator overall. Like, you know, when we read books that are in third person,
yeah,
that's how I kind of like took it as. But I'm gonna have to read it to see, because it did, like, the voice of it did seem different.
Yeah, it was like written in
It was strange
way. Yeah,
and I think that's what caught me off guard too.
At first, I thought it was gonna be like at the end we were gonna find out that this whole thing was like a report, and that person was kind of going in there and filling us in and some other things. But I guess it was really just the author just talking to the reader in a way.
For storyline, I gave it a 5. Overall, I really enjoyed the book. Like, the storyline was done so well. This author did a tremendous job with this story and executed it very well. I mean, for it to have its own movie, like, it has opened me up to, at least right now, more of his work. And I told you about a book that I'm interested in reading from him.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed it. So I gave it a 5.
I also gave it a 5. I think the overall story, plot, everything in between was great. You know, you have a couple of these movies out already about being stuck in space and just space overall. Some cheesy, some really good. But I think overall this was a great story, and I'm excited to see it translated into a movie.
Yeah, I'm really excited for our movie review for this.
Yeah.
I'm stoked. Which, by the way, the story that I'm looking forward to read, and I feel like you would enjoy too, that from what I'm told is being made into a movie, is his other book called The Hail Mary Project.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard really good things about it. I showed you the TikTok that I heard more about it. First, I finished the book, and then just coincidentally, I get a TikTok about it.
Yeah.
And then I heard one of a content creator that I watch also talk about it. I was like, okay, now I really have that itching to get the book. But apparently they're making that into a movie as well. So I guess that goes to show that he's a really great author and is really great at storytelling so much that, hey, we're getting another movie.
Yeah. Overall, my score was a 4.8 out of 5.
Mine was a 4.2 out of 5. And if I took out the relatability part, it it would be a 4.5 out of 5.
Yeah. So overall, very good book. But obviously, as always, go check it out, read it for yourself, make your own opinion. We're all different kinds of readers, but
Yes.
yeah, I'd still say it's a very recommended book, not just recommended in our usual way of we recommend you go and read it and making your opinion, but we also recommend reading it because it was
Giving it a
overall
try.
an enjoyable experience. But I mean, I guess I will say it's for those that enjoy like this kind of sci-fi type of thing, because if you don't normally, I mean, you didn't normally like it, so, and you ended up
Not
enjoying
too much.
it.
Yeah. I think like when it's done this well, it intrigues me more. Hence why I actually want to take a look or like read the Hail Mary project now.
Yeah.
And I said it, I'm not really typically into this this genre. I think what made it very palatable per se is one, the writing style, but also two, the comedic effect that it has throughout the book to kind of bring some light in some heavier moments of the story.
Yeah.
And so me, who loves my rom-coms, heavy on the com, I'm going to enjoy when a sci-fi has like some comedy in it to make it more enjoyable per se and not have it so serious all the time.
Right.
So if it's really a book that you should just give it a shot.
Yeah.
I know like maybe people who are just not as open. So let's just say like people who are just straight into like romance or like straight into fantasy, maybe it might not be if they're not open to it, they may not try it. But if you could just open your mind just a little bit and just read it, I'm telling you, you're gonna enjoy it.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the end of The Martian. That is our fifth book.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, fifth book.
And now it is time for
The July book.
The July book.
So I said it in the last episode, but the book that we're reading for July is called What the River Knows by Isabel Ibañez. Which yesterday when I was breaking up the chapters, something about this book is that it comes in parts.
Mm-hmm.
So there are 4 parts to this book, which just so happens to work when you're dividing a book in 4 parts.
Mm-hmm.
It's somewhat going to work for this. For the first book, we're not finishing up the first part of the story. We're stopping, I think, like a chapter or 2 before it gets into the second part. But for the most part, we'll be following the set parts for that book.
Yeah.
So, and I showed you that it comes with a map.
Yeah.
As well as all the chapters are like when it's rather than saying like chapter 1, it's in Spanish. So capítulo 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
etc. So I'm interested to see how that plays. That makes me think that we may see more Spanish words in this book, and I'm always stoked for that. I love seeing that represented in a book.
Which I thought was weird because I know the author is Spanish or Hispanic, but if I remember correctly, I thought I had seen that it took place in Egypt or something like that.
Yeah, but the character herself.
All right.
That's what I like seeing. Or personal, and we'll see it more as we start to read and get to know these characters. But if I understood it correctly, I think the character herself, like the main character, she is Hispanic. Hence why there's going to be Spanish words in this. And I like seeing that representation because, I mean, like with this book and other books as well, you really just see like the American side of it, but you don't really see different cultures in it sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like seeing that representation in it, because sometimes, you know, you can put yourself in it and actually feel a little bit closer to the character themselves as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, little things like that. So for the first set of chapters, which, talking about scheduling, so for the first week of July, we're gonna post the Martian movie review.
Mm-hmm.
And then afterwards, for the rest of July, it'll be the first set of chapters. So I'm still going to mention the chapters right now, and I'll also mention it in when we do the Martian review. That way it's sit on these both episodes. But the first set of chapters that we'll be reading for What the River Knows by Isabel Ibañez are going to be chapters 1 through 9. And we'll be talking about that on the second week of July.
Yeah, I think that wraps it up. Next is the movie review. So I'm stoked for that one. We'll see how long I can, or how short I can make that.
It'll be a lot of you yapping.
Yeah, that one will. So we'll see what happens then. I'm excited to see it. We'll probably make it soon, because I can't really, like, I want to have the book as fresh as possible while seeing that. So
we'll find a time this week.
But yeah, other than that, that is the end of The Martian. That is the end of book 5. And now time to move on to the July book and book number 6.
Yay!
So I guess we'll see. Well, we'll see you in the movie review, and then after that, we'll start on the book.
Yes.
So until then, we'll see you at the movies.
Get your popcorn ready, people.
Yeah. Except don't make that much noise, because I hate people that chew during the movie. So careful.
And I'm a yapper.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I think that does it.
Bye-bye.
See you.